Hi everybody, the name's Siskind, Jeremy Siskind, and I am the author of Jazz Piano Fundamentals. That's a book series. There's 3 different volumes playing solo jazz piano, as well as the Solo Standards for Piano series. And I say series, and this video is going to come out in October. In about 3 weeks, I'm going to be able to release Solo Standards Volume 2. That's going to be very exciting. I'll keep you up to date on that. Great. So today's video is titled First Lesson in Rhythm Changes. So I'm really going to pretend like you know nothing about rhythm changes. Maybe that's true. Maybe some of you do know something. And just for your reference, I'm going to be showing you some pages, some diagrams from Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2, in which there's 2 chapters that deal in some detail about rhythm changes. So let's start with this question. What is rhythm changes? Okay. So rhythm changes is a subcategory of jazz repertoire. It's very useful, I think, to think of rhythm changes as a category kind of like the blues is a category. It's very common in a jazz set to play one blues tune. It's slightly less common to play one rhythm changes, but it's only slightly less common. Let's say maybe 15 to 20% of the jazz repertoire is blues pieces. Maybe 5 to 10% of the jazz repertoire is rhythm changes pieces. And some of the ones that you might have heard of might include Olio, maybe is the quintessential rhythm changes piece in jazz. Maybe the most played. Dexterity and Anthropology are 2 by Charlie Parker. Moose the Mooch is another one by Charlie Parker. Rhythmaning by Thelonious Monk. Lester Leaps In, Squatty Roo is the old Count Basie rhythm changes piece. And people do like to mention, and it is true, the theme song from The Flintstones is in rhythm changes. So, you know, you've got this kind of body of pieces that are in this rhythm changes chord progression. Now, this name, rhythm changes, refers to the Gershwin classic, I've Got Rhythm. If you've never heard it, it is the basis for all of these rhythm changes tunes. And repeat. Here's the bridge. What just happened at the end is a slight tag, right? Which means there's a slight addition to the form. Instead of the normal 8 bars, I think it ends up being an extra 2 bars at the end of I Got Rhythm. And this is maybe a strange thing about rhythm changes, but it almost always lops off that end tag and makes it nice and even. 8 bars for the first A, 8 for the second A, 8 for the B section, which is known as the bridge, and 8 for the last 4 bars. The last A section, excuse me. So what I haven't mentioned and what some of you might be wondering is like what it is. And rhythm changes is a set of tunes that is written over that chord progression that I just played for I Got Rhythm, but with new melodies. In jazz, we use the word contrafact, and contrafact refers to exactly that. A piece that uses that recycles an old harmonic progression, but gives it a new melody. And the art of writing contrafacts is associated with the bebop era, 1940s, 1950s, in which it was very common to use these kind of swing chord progressions, but write more complex melodies over them. So I want to play that A section of I've Got Rhythm one more time and then show you a couple of these different tunes that were written over that progression. So let me just pause and I know some of you, if you're taking this first lesson, then you might not be as attuned to some musical things. Try to ignore my right hand here, because it's the chord progression we want to focus on, right? So we call call this a 1-6-2-5 chord progression. And this is a great chord progression for basically just staying around the tonic, making it sound like we're doing something, but we're kind of just circling the drain. I'm sorry if that's a gross metaphor, but we're just kind of circling around. People compare it to the heart and soul progression. It's slightly different. That's 1-6-4-5. This is 1-6-2-5. And then this last 4 measures is the most complex part. It moves from the 1 chord to what we call the 4 chord. So 1-6-2-5, 1-6-2-5, moving to the 4 chord and back to the 1. Okay? So for instance, Olio uses the same chord progression. Or dexterity. I'm getting dexterity and anthropology confused in my mind. Let me do anthropology first. Listen to the left hand, even though the right hand's going to be distracting. Right. I think I'm thinking of Bloom Dito, which is another rhythm changes tune. Oh no, I'm forgetting it. Let me play another one. How about rhythming? Here's Bloom Dito. Totally wrong. Just forget I said anything about Bloom Dito. That's a blues. I'm so sorry. If I were the editing type, I'd edit this out. So let's look at what this chord progression looks like. So rhythm changes is usually in B flat. Great jazz musicians can play rhythm changes in every key. But all of the tunes that I played for you, and I think all of the ones that I listed for you, are all in the key of B flat. So that is the native place for rhythm changes. And certainly if you're only going to learn it in one key, I would learn it in B flat. Now, there's going to be a lot of variations. When you have this kind of progression that's reused and reused, that's played and replayed, that's got different heads, we're going to see some different details in the chord progressions. So if you've learned a version of rhythm changes that doesn't look exactly like this, we'll kind of get to that. But this is one version of the standard progression of rhythm changes. You can see these first 4 measures have this 1-6-2-5, 1-6-2-5 repetition. Then the next 4 measures are moving from 1 to 4. In this case, the 4 chord is E flat. That's the 4 chord. And then it's resolving back to 1. Now notice as well that it has this ascending bass line. A lot of times, right? B flat, D, E flat, E, F, and then G, C, F. A lot of times this section of the tune is structured around a bass line. Now measure 17, so that happens twice, which is why we have the first ending and the second ending. Notice they're slightly different. And then the bridge starts at measure 17, and this is the typical rhythm changes bridge, which is a cycle of dominant chords. So we start on the 3rd scale degree, and we go around the circle of fifths, which delivers us right back to the 5 chord in our cycle. So the bridge sounds like this. This might seem like the easiest part, and I guess it's easier than the cavalcade of chords that keep coming in the A section. But this presents its own difficulties, and we can definitely talk in upcoming videos about strategies for improvising over the bridge. Now, it's part of the tune Olio and then adopted in other rhythm changes tunes as part of this kind of tradition that sometimes there's no melody written for the bridge and musicians just improvise over the bridge. So truly, if you look at Olio, never has, as far as I'm aware, has there been a melody written for the bridge. It's often the pianist who improvises there, but sometimes other instruments will improvise, just depending on the gig. And then the last A section really repeats the chords of the first A. So there's your kind of primer on what rhythm changes is. Let's spend just a couple minutes going through how to improvise over this 1-6-2-5 progression, which is so crucial in jazz. First of all, let me just say that, like I said, there can be a lot of variety in terms of exactly what the progression is. I notated it here as a dominant chord for the 6, right? G7. But a true 6 chord in major would be a minor 6 chord, and that's frequently an option here as well. I'll show you some variations down the road, but I just want to acknowledge that if you're looking at that and you're saying, well, that's not truly 1-6-2-5, technically it's 1-5 of 2-2-5. You are technically correct, but these things end up being interchangeable. All right. So the biggest challenge here is that these chords go by quickly, right? Only 2 beats per chord. So there's kind of 3 big strategies that we could take. And hey, if you're following along with your hymnal, this is Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2, the purple book, and this is on page 162. So the first option is to simply improvise diatonically, right? That means staying within the notes of the scale. So ignoring the fact that these chords are changing. And why would that work? Well, okay, so first chord is B flat 6 or B flat major 7. Of course, the B flat scale is going to fit with that. Let's skip over the 6th chord for now. Then we have a 2-5 in B flat, and these chords, also take the B flat major scale. And then we just have this G7 or G minor chord, which also is going to work well enough with the B flat scale. Like, check it out. If I play G minor 7 in the left hand, E flat's really the only questionable note. And as long as we resolve it appropriately, and no stress there. And even if we have G7, right, E flat is the flat 13, B flat's the flat 9, the sharp 9, my apologies. It's not the most natural scale, but I can engineer it so that sounds pretty good. So if I'm playing, just looping that 1-6-2-5 progression, which I would highly recommend for practice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay within the notes of that B flat major scale as a start. I could add in like some lower chromatic neighbors, like if I wanted to make it a little spicier. Right, I'm adding in these little half steps between notes of the scale. Right, so that's option 1, is just to use that diatonic scale. And you can just hear it definitely sounds good. It's not always the most interesting choice, right? Second option is to use the blues scale. And we have kind of 2 blues scales we can talk about. One is the minor blues and one is the major blues. And let's actually start with the major blues, which is going to be not that far off from the major scale, right? So if you know your major blues scale, it's like the pentatonic scale, but we're gonna add in the note between the 2nd and 3rd scale degree, in this case C sharp. Sounds very happy and definitely sounds jazzy. That minor blues scale is like the B flat pentatonic. Sorry, B flat minor pentatonic, forgot an important word in there. Plus an E natural, the note between the fourth and fifth. And so this is going to rub a lot more against those chords, which could be cool. And it can be really nice to mix those blues scales and play a little bit of major and a little bit of minor. Here's major. Do you hear where it went to minor? So that can be really effective for this progression. Okay. Now the last potential strategy is the hardest one to execute, which is to actually play the individual chords. And how are you going to know that you're playing the individual chords? You're going to know by introducing arpeggios, right? By playing this sort of thing for B flat, this sort of thing for G7, right? So here we really actually have to change for every 2 beats, which is of course more difficult than just thinking about a single scale. So, if you want to see me doing this, might look. I might not play arpeggios for every single chord, but I'm really thinking about where I am in the measure and what's happening as these chords go by. And by the way, if you're interested in practicing, I have a few of my favorite arpeggio exercises in the beginning of the next unit of the book. So starting on page 171, love that, practice that in every key. Arpeggio pattern 2, I'm on page 172. So we're kind of learning about some hand positions that we can hit that are going to outline these chords. I love this one, arpeggio pattern 3. Super colorful. Arpeggio pattern 4 is a really cool shape. So I've got the practice there for you to do if you're willing to put in the time. Again, all that is in Jazz Piano Fundamentals number 2, the purple book. Stay tuned. I'll do some more videos about rhythm changes and talk about the second half of the A section and as improvising over the bridge as well. Thanks so much for watching. If you've watched all the way to the end, say something about editing, because I really messed up talking about Bloom Dito, which is not at all a rhythm changes piece. So tell me that I should edit my videos, but do it nicely if you've watched all the way to the end. Thanks, everyone.